I never thought I'd hear those words come from her mouth, not in that sharp tone that cut through me like a knife. Sit down. Don't move. You're not leaving until I'm finished with you. There was something in her eyes that felt less like a playful dare and more like a verdict, and in that moment I froze, caught between resistance and an odd, unfamiliar rush that sent my heart racing. My palms were damp, my voice caught in my throat, and I could feel the quiet tremor that ran through my chest, as if my own body wasn't sure whether it wanted to fight or give in. The room felt suddenly smaller, the ceiling closer, shadows pressing against me. I could smell the faint sweetness of her perfume mixed with the sterile sharpness of nail polish remover that lingered from the table beside her. She held a lipstick in her hand like it was both a weapon and a key, and I couldn't tell which terrified me more, the idea of what she was about to do to me, or the realization that I wasn't entirely sure I wanted her to stop. My voice cracked when I finally whispered, "What are you doing?" But she didn't answer right away. Instead, she tilted her head, studying my face like a sculptor considering uncarved stone, and I swear the silence between us grew heavy enough to bend the air. When she finally spoke, her words were slow, deliberate. "I'm showing you what I see. I'm showing you the version of you that's been hiding all along." My stomach tightened. The logical part of me screamed that this was insane, that I had no business being in this position, that this wasn't who I was. But another part of me, buried deeper and quieter, stirred with a pulse that didn't feel like fear at all. It felt dangerously close to curiosity. And that terrified me even more. She guided me into the chair, and my knees almost buckled beneath me. I remember how my reflection stared back at me from the vanity mirror, ordinary, unremarkable, familiar in a way that suddenly felt fragile. My hair unkempt. My jaw sharp. My eyes uncertain. I thought, this is me, this is all I am. And yet, as she brushed a strand of my hair aside with her fingertips, I realized she didn't see that at all. She saw something else entirely. The first stroke of the brush across my skin was featherlight, but the weight of it landed somewhere deeper. Foundation, powder, color, all textures and pigments I'd never worn, now pressing into me as if writing a new script across my features. I wanted to close my eyes and disappear, but I couldn't look away from the mirror. Every dab, every blend, every line pulled me further from the boy I thought I was and closer to someone I didn't recognize. Someone softer. Someone frighteningly possible. My heart pounded with every transformation she coaxed from my face. The boy in the mirror blurred, dissolved, reshaped. I could feel my resistance fray at the edges, not in defeat, but in something far stranger, a reluctant fascination. And behind that fascination, a whispering fear, if I let this happen, if I truly saw what she wanted me to see, would I ever be able to unsee it again? The lipstick came last. She uncapped it with a slow, deliberate click, her eyes meeting mine in the mirror. "Open," she said gently, and my lips parted before I could argue. The smooth glide of color set fire to my nerves, and when I looked again at my reflection, I gasped. I didn't see myself anymore, or at least, not the version of myself I had always clung to. What looked back at me was her creation. And maybe, just maybe, a truth I'd been too afraid to imagine. I sat there, breath shallow, unable to speak. My chest ached with the weight of a question I couldn't yet form, and her hand rested lightly on my shoulder as though to ground me, to remind me this was real, not a dream I could wake from. I wanted to shout, to laugh, to rip it all away, but instead I whispered a single word, trembling and hoarse. "Why?" She only smiled, that knowing smile that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't realized I was desperate for. "Because," she said softly, "sometimes the version of ourselves we've been hiding is the only one worth finding." I thought I would rip everything off the moment she stepped back, but instead I just sat there, frozen in the chair like my body didn't belong to me anymore. The mirror in front of me was no longer a reflection but a challenge, daring me to look closer, daring me not to look away. My throat was dry, my tongue heavy, and yet my eyes stayed fixed, caught in that strange new version of myself that felt both impossibly far away and unnervingly close. Her fingers lingered on my shoulder, warm, steady, as if she knew I might bolt at any second. breathe, she whispered, and for the first time I realized I hadn't taken a full breath in minutes. When the air finally rushed into my lungs, it carried with it the scent of rose powder and lip gloss, faint but undeniable, and I realized it was coming from me. That detail alone made my stomach twist. I wanted to laugh it off, to break the spell with a joke, but the words caught in my throat because the truth was I didn't feel like laughing. I felt exposed, peeled open in a way I hadn't consented to, and yet beneath that raw discomfort there was something else, a quiet electricity thrumming through me, whispering questions I wasn't ready to hear. She tilted my chin upward with a single finger, forcing me to look at myself in the light. "See," she murmured, her voice low, confident. "It's not about pretending. It's about revealing." "Revealing what?" I snapped, harsher than I intended. My own voice startled me. It sounded fragile, defensive, as though I was the one on trial. She didn't flinch. She just studied me with those clear, searching eyes that made me feel like a liar even though I hadn't spoken a word untrue. "Revealing the part of you you've been taught to bury," she said finally. "The softness. The beauty. The possibility." I shook my head, but the movement was clumsy, uncertain. "This isn't me," I muttered, though even as I said it, I couldn't tear my gaze from the mirror. The girl staring back at me wasn't me, couldn't be me, and yet she wasn't a stranger either. There was something hauntingly familiar in her eyes, something that echoed inside my chest like an old memory resurfacing. "Then why can't you look away?" she asked quietly. Her words stung because they were true. My hands gripped the edge of the vanity until my knuckles whitened, but my eyes stayed locked, tracing the curve of the lipstick, the softened angles of my jaw under foundation, the way my lashes seemed to flutter heavier with mascara. None of it should have belonged to me, and yet it was sitting on my skin, undeniable. I wanted to peel it off, wipe everything away until the boy I knew came back, but another thought clawed its way through the panic. What if the boy was never all there was? The silence between us stretched long and fragile. I could hear the faint hum of traffic outside the window, the tick of the wall clock, even the quick rhythm of my own breathing. And then, without warning, she lifted something from the bed, a folded piece of fabric, smooth and shimmering, catching the light. My chest tightened at the sight of it. "No," I said quickly, instinctively, shaking my head. "Yes," she countered softly, with a certainty that unnerved me. "You've already come this far." "I didn't agree to this," I whispered, but the words sounded weak, hollow. "You didn't stop me either," she replied. The fabric slid across my lap, cool and alien against my skin. A dress. Simple, yet undeniably feminine, with a flowing shape that promised to erase what little armor I had left. My hands stayed rigid at my sides, refusing to touch it, but I could feel its presence like a weight pressing into me, daring me to imagine what would happen if I put it on. Panic and something else, something hotter, sharper, clashed inside me, leaving me dizzy. My chest ached with the force of all the things I wanted to deny, but couldn't. And through it all, she just watched me with patient intensity, as though she had all the time in the world to let me unravel. "Why are you doing this to me?" I finally whispered, my voice cracking under the weight of the question. Her answer came gently, but with unshakable conviction. "Because you're stronger than you think, and sometimes the only way to find that strength is to see yourself differently. You don't have to accept it, but you do have to face it." The dress lay across my knees like a secret I wasn't ready to admit. My hands twitched, torn between pushing it away and clutching it to my chest. And in that moment, I realized the real battle wasn't against her, it was against myself. The dress seemed to breathe against my legs, though I knew that was impossible. It was just fabric, just threads stitched together. And yet the weight of it felt alive, like it was waiting for me to make a decision, to either cast it aside or give in. My chest burned with the thought of how easily this moment could split my life into two paths, one familiar and safe, the other uncharted, terrifying, and strangely magnetic. She didn't push it into my hands, not yet. She simply leaned back against the wall, arms folded, watching me with that unreadable half-smile that unsettled me more than any command could. "You're fighting yourself," she said softly, "and you're losing." Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. "You don't know me," I muttered, still staring down at the dress, though the lie trembled in my throat the moment it escaped. Because she did know me, or at least, she saw something in me that I had spent years trying to bury under layers of denial and habit. "I know enough," she said calmly. "I know you're terrified of how easily you could step into this. Terrified because a part of you already wants to." Heat rushed to my face. I wanted to argue, to snap back with something sharp that would shut her down, but all I could do was grip the armrest of the chair until my fingers ached. The truth was vibrating under my skin, unspoken but undeniable, and it scared me to death. "Try it," she whispered, her voice softer now, coaxing rather than commanding. "If you hate it, we'll stop. But if you don't." Her words dangled unfinished, like a cliff I was being dared to step off. My throat tightened. The thought of slipping into that dress made my stomach twist in knots, but beneath the dread there was an insistent pull, a dangerous curiosity. I finally looked up at her, and in her eyes I saw no malice, no mockery, just a strange kind of certainty, as though she already knew the outcome I couldn't admit. That certainty burned through me more than anything else. My hand twitched forward, then back again, trembling in the air above the fabric. It felt like touching it would seal something irreversible, so I hovered there, torn. But she reached down, gently lifting it, and, before I could resist, she draped it over my arms. The fabric slid across my skin like water, cool and smooth, and I shivered as if it had whispered a secret into my ear. "No," I breathed again, but the word didn't carry conviction anymore. "Yes," she whispered back, and somehow it sounded less like persuasion and more like truth. The next few moments blurred. I remember standing, legs weak, while she guided me step by step, her voice calm, her hands steady. The dress slid down over my shoulders, the hem brushing against my knees, and when the zipper closed at my back, it was like a door shutting on the boy I thought I was. My breath caught in my throat. The mirror waited. I didn't want to look. My eyes darted anywhere but forward, the floor, the wall, her face, but she gently turned my chin, and suddenly I was staring at a reflection I couldn't reconcile. The boy was gone. Not erased, not destroyed, but softened into something that made my heart pound with confusion. The lines of my body blurred into new shapes, the colors on my face now matched by the fabric I wore, and the person staring back wasn't a stranger, but she wasn't the me I'd known either. A hot wave of panic surged through me. "Take it off," I blurted, my voice high and shaking. "Take it off, I can't." But she stepped closer, laying her hands gently on my arms. "Breathe. Just breathe." I tried. My lungs fought against me, my pulse thundering in my ears, but slowly, hesitantly, the panic ebbed into something else. Something quieter. I looked again, forcing myself to hold the reflection, to confront it instead of running. And then it hit me. Beneath the fear, beneath the trembling shame, there was a flicker of something I couldn't deny. A strange, almost painful beauty. The kind of beauty that terrified me because it felt like mine. My voice cracked when I whispered, "That's not me." Her hand squeezed my arm, grounding me. "Maybe it's more you than you've ever let yourself be." The words echoed through me like a bell, reverberating into places I had tried for years not to feel. My legs nearly buckled, and I gripped the vanity for support, staring at the girl in the mirror with wide, tear-stung eyes. For the first time in my life, I didn't know who I was anymore. I pressed my palms against the vanity, as if anchoring myself to the wood could stop the world from shifting beneath me. My reflection shimmered back at me, unreal and undeniable, a ghost of myself wrapped in borrowed colors and cloth. The silence between us stretched, heavy and unyielding, until the sound of my own shallow breaths filled the room. I wanted to cry, to tear everything away and demand she give me back the version of myself that felt simple, even if that simplicity had been a cage. But the tears that gathered at the corners of my eyes refused to fall. They clung stubbornly, shimmering like they too were afraid of being seen. She noticed. Of course she did. Her voice softened, quieter than before, but no less steady. "You're not broken," she whispered. "You're becoming." The words struck something raw. I shook my head hard, but the gesture lacked force. "Becoming what?" "Some kind of joke." My voice cracked on the last word, betraying me. She stepped closer, close enough that her reflection appeared beside mine, calm, unflinching. "Does this look like a joke?" she asked, gesturing gently at the mirror. I stared at the image. My lips trembled, painted and unfamiliar. My shoulders sloped differently under the fabric, my silhouette redefined. It didn't look like a joke. That was the problem. It looked too real. Too possible. "I can't," I muttered, my voice nearly breaking. "I can't be this." "Why not?" she asked simply. No challenge in her tone this time, just genuine curiosity. "Because," the word caught in my throat, and suddenly I realized I had no answer. All the reasons I thought I had, what people would say, what it meant, what it threatened, crumbled the longer I stared. The truth was uglier. I wasn't afraid of what the world would think. I was afraid of what it meant that I couldn't look away. She must have seen it in my face, the war I was waging against myself, because she reached out and took my hand. Her grip was firm, grounding, pulling me back from the spiraling chaos inside my chest. "You don't have to define it now," she said. "You don't have to name it. Just allow it. Allow it." The phrase wrapped around me like an invisible net. Could I allow it? Could I live with the knowledge that this other version of me existed, breathing, visible, undeniable? My knees trembled, but I didn't collapse. Instead, I found myself slowly lifting my chin, looking again at the reflection. This time, instead of recoiling, I studied it carefully, tracing each unfamiliar contour as if mapping foreign territory. The eyes were mine. The mouth was mine. The curve of the jaw, softened by powder, was mine. All of it mine, and yet, not the me I had chosen to show the world. A strange calm crept into me, fragile but insistent, like the hush that follows a storm. For the first time, I let the silence settle without trying to shatter it. That's when she spoke again, her voice quiet but threaded with something unshakable. "The hardest part isn't seeing it. The hardest part is realizing you can't unsee it." My stomach flipped at her words, because even as they fell from her lips, I knew she was right. The mirror had become a doorway, and I had stepped through whether I wanted to or not. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice faint, fragile. Her smile was small, almost sad, but her eyes glowed with a certainty that scared me. "Now," she said softly, "you live with the truth that you're more than you thought you were. And, maybe, you learn not to run from it." The words settled into me, heavy and inescapable. I stood there, trembling in the dress, staring at the reflection that felt both alien and achingly familiar. And in the quiet, in the fragile stillness, I realized, no matter how desperately I wanted to, I would never be able to forget this moment. Never. I couldn't sleep that night. The mirror still haunted me, even after the makeup had been wiped away, even after the dress was folded neatly back into the drawer like it had never existed. My body was back to normal, but my mind wasn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her staring back at me, the version of myself I shouldn't have recognized, but did. I tossed and turned, sheets tangling around my legs, the silence of the room pressing heavy on my chest. Every creak of the house felt louder, every tick of the clock more accusatory, as if time itself was demanding I decide who I was. But how could I? The boy I thought I knew felt flimsy now, hollow, like a cardboard cutout standing in for someone real. And the girl felt too alive. By morning, I looked as though I hadn't slept in days. My eyes were bloodshot, my jaw tense. I tried to wash the night away with cold water, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. This one was familiar again, stripped bare. No paint, no disguise. Just me. So why did it feel like a lie? I gripped the edge of the sink, knuckles white. "Stop," I muttered to myself, but the word rang hollow. Stop what? Thinking? Feeling? Remembering? I couldn't. The memory had carved itself too deep. When I stepped out of the bathroom, she was waiting for me in the kitchen, already dressed, already awake, her calmness infuriating. She slid a mug of coffee across the counter toward me as if nothing had happened, as if my entire identity hadn't unraveled under her hands the night before. "Morning," she said simply. I wanted to snap at her, to tell her she had ruined everything. But the word caught in my throat. Instead, I muttered back, "Morning," my voice hoarse. We drank in silence. The coffee was bitter, but it grounded me, the heat steadying the tremor in my hands. I could feel her watching me, though she didn't speak until I finally broke the quiet. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice low, almost accusing. She didn't look guilty. She didn't even flinch. "Because I wanted you to see yourself," she said, like it was the simplest answer in the world. "I didn't ask you to," I snapped, sharper than I intended. "No," she admitted calmly, "but you didn't stop me either." The words hit like a slap. I opened my mouth to argue, but no rebuttal came. She was right. I hadn't stopped her. Somewhere deep down, I had wanted to see. That truth made me feel sick, like the floor had tilted under me and I had no footing left. "You don't get it," I muttered, pushing the mug away. "You've made things worse. I can't get it out of my head now." Her gaze softened, almost sympathetic. "That's because it's not something to erase," she said gently. "It's something to face." I laughed bitterly, though there was no humor in it. "Face what?" "That I looked that way? That I didn't hate it." My voice cracked on the last words, the admission tearing out of me like a wound. Her silence was answer enough. I buried my face in my hands, ashamed of the tears that burned behind my eyes. I didn't want this. I didn't want the confusion, the turmoil, the aching curiosity that made me wonder what would happen if I stepped back into that reflection. But I couldn't undo it. I couldn't unsee her. And then she said something I hadn't expected, something that knocked the air from my lungs. "You don't have to choose right now," she whispered. "You just have to admit she exists." The words wrapped around me like chains and wings all at once, binding, liberating, terrifying. I couldn't speak. I could only sit there, shaking, knowing she was right. I had seen her. She existed. And she wasn't going away. The next few days were unbearable. Every time I passed a mirror, I felt like it was mocking me, daring me to look closer. At school, at the store, even in the dark screen of my phone, I caught glimpses of her. Not fully formed, not painted into being, but hovering in the edges of my reflection like a shadow I couldn't shake. I tried to distract myself, homework, video games, anything that would keep my mind from circling back, but it always did. I'd catch myself touching my lips absent-mindedly, remembering the slick weight of lipstick. Or smoothing my hair, wondering what it would look like styled differently. These tiny betrayals scared me more than anything else. She noticed, of course. She always noticed. She didn't bring out the makeup again, or the dress, but she watched me with the same quiet patience, like she was waiting for me to crack. And maybe I already had. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon. We were sitting in her room, the air thick with boredom and the faint scent of her vanilla candle. She sprawled across the bed, flipping through a magazine, while I sat in the chair by the window, restless, chewing at my thumbnail. Out of nowhere, she said, "You keep avoiding it." I froze. Avoiding what? She closed the magazine, set it aside, and fixed me with that unblinking gaze that made me feel stripped bare. "Yourself." The words lodged in my chest. I wanted to laugh, dismiss her, but instead I felt heat rising to my face. "You don't know what you're talking about," I muttered, staring hard out the window. "Then look at me," she said. I didn't. "Look at me," she repeated, firmer this time. Slowly, unwillingly, I turned. Her expression was steady, not cruel, not mocking. Just steady. "You've been restless since that night," she said. "Don't pretend you haven't. I can see it in the way you can't sit still, the way you keep touching your face, the way you look at mirrors like they're going to betray you." My mouth opened, but no words came out. She had me cornered. Finally, I croaked, "So what if I have?" "It doesn't mean anything." She tilted her head. "Then why are you so afraid to try again?" The question landed like a stone in my stomach. Afraid. That was it. Afraid not of what would happen if I hated it, but of what would happen if I didn't. "I can't," I whispered, shaking my head. "I can't go through that again." "Yes, you can," she said softly. "And you will." Before I could stop her, she opened her drawer and pulled out the same folded fabric, the same dress, its shimmer unmistakable in the light. My heart lurched into my throat. "No," I said, standing quickly. "Not again. I told you." But she rose too, holding it out, her eyes never leaving mine. "This isn't me forcing you," she said firmly. "This is you choosing. Right here. Right now." The dress hung between us like a question, heavier than it should have been. My hands trembled at my sides. I could have walked away. I could have slammed the door, ended it there. But my legs wouldn't move. My eyes were fixed on the fabric, on the possibility it carried, and I hated myself for wanting it. Minutes passed in silence. Finally, with a shaking hand, I reached out and touched it. Just a brush of my fingertips, light as air, but enough to seal the truth. I wanted to see her again. Her expression softened into the faintest smile, but she didn't gloat. She just handed me the dress, her voice gentle. Then let her breathe. The fabric settled into my hands, and my chest constricted with both terror and anticipation. My knees felt weak, my mouth dry, but deep inside, a flicker of something almost like relief sparked to life. Because for the first time, I wasn't being dragged into it. I was stepping into it myself. The weight of the dress in my hands was unbearable. It felt heavier than it had any right to be, as though the threads were woven from all the things I'd never said, never admitted. My palms were slick, my chest tight, and for a moment I just stood there, frozen, clutching the fabric like it might burn me if I let it touch too much of me. She didn't speak. She just waited, patient as ever, her silence louder than any command. I hated that she could see right through me, that she knew I was already too far gone to walk away. Finally, trembling, I turned toward the bathroom. I didn't look back as I shut the door behind me. Inside, the mirror loomed above the sink, harsh in the fluorescent light. My reflection stared back at me, plain, ordinary, restless, and I felt a pang of guilt, as though I were betraying him by what I was about to do. But wasn't he betraying me too? By keeping me in a box I didn't fit into anymore? My hands shook as I undressed, every movement mechanical, slow. The cool air brushed against my skin, raising goosebumps, and when I finally stepped into the dress, pulling it up over my body, the fabric slid across me like a whisper I couldn't quite understand. The zipper at the back was tricky. My fingers fumbled clumsily until she knocked softly on the door. "Do you need help?" Her voice was steady, unhurried, as though she knew I wouldn't say no this time. My silence was answer enough. The door cracked open, and she slipped in, closing it quietly behind her. She didn't tease me. She didn't smirk. She simply stepped forward and, with careful hands, zipped the dress the rest of the way up. The sound of it, soft, final, echoed in the small room, and I felt my throat constrict. When she was done, she stepped back, giving me space, letting me look. I turned toward the mirror. The reflection that stared back made my knees weaken. It wasn't complete, not without the touches she had given me last time, the paint, the powder, but even so, the outline was there. My body softened by the fabric, my frame reshaped, my silhouette no longer the boy I had clung to. It was less polished, less striking, but somehow more intimate, rawer, as though I had peeled back a layer of armor and revealed something fragile underneath. I lifted a hand, pressing trembling fingers to the glass, half convinced it would ripple, that she would step out and replace me. My voice came out in a whisper. "That's me." It wasn't a question this time. She moved to stand behind me, her reflection merging with mine, her eyes warm, steady. "Yes," she murmured. "That's you." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. Not from shame, not from panic at least, not only from those things but from something deeper. Relief. As though I had been holding my breath for years and was finally letting air fill my lungs. But along with relief came terror. Because if this was me, if this was real, then what did it mean for everything else? My friends. My family. The boy I had spent so long trying to be. The questions swirled, too many to answer, too heavy to carry. I staggered back from the mirror, pressing my back against the wall, my breath shallow. I choked out. I can't let anyone see me like this. Her hand found mine, warm and grounding. "No one has to," she said gently. "Not until you're ready." I squeezed my eyes shut, a tear slipping free. "What if I'm never ready?" She squeezed my hand tighter. "Then at least you'll know who you are when you're alone." The words settled into me like a key turning in a lock. Terrifying. Liberating. Inescapable. And as I stood there, trembling in the dress, I realized something I hadn't dared admit until now. I wanted to see how far this could go. The next week was torture. Every ordinary routine, walking down the street, sitting in class, laughing at dumb jokes with friends, felt suddenly fragile, as though one wrong movement might shatter the thin disguise I wore. None of them knew. None of them could guess. But I carried the weight of the secret like a stone in my chest, dragging it everywhere. At night, when the house was quiet, I found myself sneaking into the mirror again. Sometimes with the dress, sometimes with little things: lip balm, a brush through my hair, one of her scarves draped clumsily around my shoulders. Each time, I told myself it was the last. Each time, I believed the lie less. The reflection no longer scared me the way it had at first. What scared me now was how much I missed her when I wasn't looking. But with that pull came dread. Because the more I leaned into it, the harder it became to play the role I'd always known. Every laugh with my friends felt hollow, every compliment about how manly I was stung like a hidden bruise. I wanted to scream, to confess, but I knew the moment I did, everything would change. And then, one night, it almost did. I had been careless. Too lost in the moment, too sure I was safe. She and I had been experimenting quietly in her room, makeup scattered across the vanity, the soft glow of her lamp turning everything into a secret world of color and possibility. I sat in the chair, lips parted as she traced liner across my eyes, the silence heavy with concentration. That's when the knock came. Sharp. Sudden. Too real. We both froze. My stomach dropped, my body rigid in the chair. Her voice wavered only slightly when she called out, "1 second." But my pulse was hammering so loud I could barely hear her. I turned to her with wide, panicked eyes, my lips already trembling with questions. Who was it? Did they know? What would happen if they saw me? She moved fast. With a calmness that didn't match the panic in her eyes, she began wiping away the makeup, her hands quick, precise. "Don't move," she whispered. "Don't say anything." I sat there, paralyzed, while she darted to the door and cracked it open just enough to block the view. A voice on the other side, casual, unsuspecting, asked if she wanted to join them for something downstairs. Her response was effortless. A laugh, a polite excuse, a promise to come later. The door clicked shut again, and silence returned, heavy and suffocating. My hands shook as I touched my face, smudges of eyeliner streaking my fingers. "They almost saw me," I whispered, horrified. "They didn't," she said firmly, kneeling in front of me, her hands steadying mine. "You're safe." But the fear had already sunk its claws into me. Safe? For how long? How many more close calls before someone found out, before the fragile walls I had built collapsed around me? I stood abruptly, pacing the room, my chest heaving. I can't do this. I can't risk it. What if? She cut me off, her voice sharp for the first time. What if they did? What if they saw? Would it really destroy you, or would it just force you to stop hiding? Her words stopped me cold. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. The truth was too terrifying to face. Because maybe it wasn't the outside world I was afraid of. Maybe it was me. I sank back into the chair, burying my face in my hands. I don't know who I am anymore. Her hand rested gently on my shoulder, grounding me. Then maybe it's time you start finding out. Her words echoed long after the room fell silent again. After that close call, everything felt sharper, more dangerous. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made my skin prickle, the creak of the stairs sent my heart racing. It wasn't just about being caught anymore, it was about what would be revealed if I was. I kept telling myself I would stop, that I would bury the dress at the bottom of her drawer, forget the way makeup felt against my skin. But the harder I tried, the stronger the pull became. The reflection had etched itself into me, a haunting that wouldn't fade. And then came the moment I hadn't expected, curiosity. Not hers. Mine. It started small, wondering what my voice might sound like if I softened it, practiced speaking differently when no one could hear. The way I caught myself adjusting my posture in the mirror, shifting my weight, tilting my head just so. Tiny experiments, secret rehearsals, each one making my heart pound as though I were committing some unspeakable crime. She noticed, of course. She always noticed. One night, when she found me tracing lipstick carefully across my lips without her help, she didn't interrupt. She just watched, quiet, her expression unreadable. When I finally looked up, flustered, embarrassed, she smiled faintly. "You're starting to want this for yourself." The words made my chest constrict. I wanted to deny it, to snap back, but all I could do was lower my gaze, ashamed by the truth in her voice. And yet, even as I trembled, part of me felt lighter. Because it was true. For the first time, this wasn't her doing, it was mine. But with that ownership came risk. The more I stepped into this hidden version of myself, the harder it became to switch back into the boy everyone knew. The mask of normalcy slipped too easily now. At school, a friend asked why I was walking differently, why I seemed off. I laughed it off, but inside my stomach knotted. The walls were closing in. Then, one evening, everything cracked a little further. We were alone again, the room dim, the mirror waiting. She handed me a wig this time, long, dark, silky. I froze, staring at it like it was contraband. "I'm not ready for that," I whispered, panic rising in my throat. "You weren't ready for the dress either," she reminded me gently. "But you did it. And you survived." The wig lay across my lap, impossibly soft, impossibly tempting. My fingers twitched against it, my breath uneven. I wanted to push it away, but instead I lifted it, slowly, carefully. When I slipped it over my head, the change was instant. My chest tightened, my stomach flipped, but my reflection, God, my reflection. The transformation wasn't perfect, wasn't polished, but it was enough. Enough to tip me over the edge, to make me gasp, to make my knees nearly buckle. I touched the strands of hair falling across my face, my hands trembling. That's not me." Her hand landed gently on my shoulder, steady, calm. "Then why are you smiling?" I froze. I hadn't realized I was. The smile slipped into a shaky laugh, half sob, half joy, and I covered my mouth, terrified of the sound. Because she was right. I was smiling. Despite the fear, despite the shame, something inside me was thrilled. And once you taste that kind of truth, you can never go back. The wig changed everything. It was such a simple thing, just strands of synthetic hair stitched together, but when it framed my face, when it brushed against my cheek, it turned the reflection into something dangerously complete. For the first time, I didn't have to squint to imagine her. She was right there, looking back at me, alive, undeniable. And I couldn't stop staring. I leaned closer to the mirror, studying every angle, brushing the hair back, letting it fall forward again. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, my breath shallow, but my eyes refused to look away. The girl wasn't perfect, her makeup a little uneven, her hair not styled, but she was real enough to make my throat tighten with a kind of aching wonder. Then the panic hit. I tore the wig off, slamming it down on the vanity, my chest heaving. "No," I gasped. "No, no, no." She didn't flinch. She just sat on the edge of the bed, watching quietly. "This isn't me," I choked out, pacing the room. "I can't let it be." If I let it be, then my words tangled, tripping over themselves, collapsing under the weight of the truth I couldn't finish. "Then what?" she asked softly. I stopped, fists clenched, trembling. My voice broke. "Then everything I've built, everything I thought I was, it's gone." Her silence lingered, heavy, before she finally said, "Maybe it wasn't everything. Maybe it was just a mask you outgrew." The words struck deep, but I couldn't admit they made sense. I pressed my hands to my face, desperate to quiet the storm inside me. I wanted her to be wrong. I wanted the reflection to vanish, to dissolve back into the boy who was simple, safe, familiar. But the truth clung to me like the wig's strands still tangled in my clothes. She existed. And she wasn't going away. That night, lying awake in the dark, I realized the fear wasn't just about being caught by others, it was about being caught by myself. Because every time I saw her, I wanted more. More makeup. More time in the dress. More chances to bring her to life. And wanting more felt dangerous. The next morning, I avoided mirrors altogether. I kept my head down, showered in the dark, dressed quickly. But it didn't matter. I could feel her there, hovering beneath my skin, like a secret heartbeat out of rhythm with the rest of me. At school, one of my friends joked that I seemed distracted, like you've got some big crush you're not telling us about. I laughed along, but my chest burned. A crush. That wasn't it at all. The thing consuming me wasn't someone else, it was me. By the end of the week, I couldn't take it anymore. I went back to her room, late at night, trembling with the weight of the decision. She was waiting, as though she had known I'd come. I can't stop thinking about it, I admitted, the words tearing free like a confession. Her eyes softened. Then don't stop. I swallowed hard. But what if I lose myself? She stepped closer, her voice steady, sure. What if you find yourself instead? The room went still. My heart pounded, my breath shaky, and I realized the line I had been clinging to, the line between who I was and who I could be, was already blurring. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted it to. The line between the two versions of me blurred faster than I could control. Days felt like lies I told the world, nights like the only hours I was honest with myself. The boy everyone saw was slipping, his edges fraying, and though I still wore him like a costume, it fit worse each day. I tried to bury myself in distractions, homework, scrolling endlessly on my phone, pretending to care about things I used to. But every idle moment, every quiet second, she crept back in. I found myself doodling little shapes in the margins of my notebooks, lipstick tubes, dresses, eyes with long lashes. Things I'd never drawn before, things I'd snapped the book shut to hide from prying eyes. It didn't help that she, my conspirator, my accomplice, seemed to sense my unraveling and feed it. Not with pressure, not anymore, but with small nudges. A compliment when my hair looked softer. A sly smile when I accidentally crossed my legs in a way that wasn't masculine. A scarf left draped over the chair as though daring me to pick it up. And I always did. The tension built until one night, the storm broke. We'd been sitting together in her room again, the lamp casting everything in its familiar glow. She handed me the wig, and I didn't protest this time. I slipped it on like it belonged, and when she reached for the eyeliner, I tilted my chin without a word. It wasn't rebellion anymore. It was ritual. When she finished, I turned to the mirror and gasped softly. Not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. I expected her now. I knew her face. And yet each time she appeared, she stole my breath in a way that felt both terrifying and beautiful. I lifted a hand, brushing a strand of hair back, and whispered, "She looks real." Her voice came from just behind me, warm, certain. "Because she is." My chest tightened. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. My reflection had already silenced me. That's when the sound shattered everything. A knock at the door. Not light. Not casual. Firm. Demanding. We both froze. My stomach dropped, the blood draining from my face. "Open up," a voice called. Familiar. Too familiar. My heart pounded. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't her parent. It was one of my friends. I looked at her, panic rising in my throat. She pressed a finger to her lips, signaling for silence, her own eyes wide. My pulse roared in my ears, my breath shallow. "Come on," the voice insisted, a little impatient now. "I know you're in there. What are you hiding?" The words twisted in my chest like a knife. Hiding. If the door opened, if they saw me like this, wig, makeup, dress, it wouldn't just be a secret spilled. It would be my whole world splitting in two. She leaned close, whispering so quietly I could barely hear her. "Don't move. Don't say a word. I'll handle this." But my hands were already trembling, my whole body locked in terror. For the first time, it wasn't the reflection that scared me. It was the possibility of being seen by someone else. And in that moment, as the knocking grew louder, I realized the truth I had been avoiding. I wasn't ready to disappear her anymore. I was terrified of losing her. The knocking rattled the door again, sharper this time, and every muscle in my body locked like a deer caught in headlights. My friend's voice carried through the wood, half playful, half suspicious. "What's going on in there? Why so secretive?" My throat closed. One push of the handle, one twist of the knob, and everything would be over. The boy they thought they knew would vanish, replaced by the girl in the mirror, and I had no idea how they would react. She moved quickly, crossing the room with a calmness I didn't share, her hand on the door handle. She cracked it open just enough, her body blocking their view. "Nothing," she said, her voice steady but light. "Just hanging out." Not a crime, is it? He chuckled from the other side. You sound out of breath. What are you hiding? Her tone sharpened, a rare edge slipping through. Privacy. Ever heard of it? A pause. My pulse drummed in the silence. Then he laughed again, awkward, uncertain, and his footsteps retreated down the hallway. The moment the sound faded, I collapsed onto the chair, burying my face in my hands. My heart was racing so hard it hurt. She shut the door quietly, leaning against it with a sigh of relief. That was close. Too close, I whispered, my voice breaking. I can't do this anymore. It's only a matter of time before someone finds out. She crossed the room, kneeling in front of me, her hands steady on my trembling knees. And what if they do? The question cut me open. I lifted my head, meeting her eyes, desperate and afraid. Then I'll lose everything. My friends. My family. Myself. Her expression softened, but she didn't let me retreat into fear. Or maybe you'll lose the lie you've been carrying. Maybe that's what needs to go. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, though I blinked them back furiously. You don't understand. You don't know what it feels like to wake up every day and pretend to be someone you're not. To keep smiling while you're terrified they'll see through you. She squeezed my hands, her voice quiet but certain. I think I do. Because I see through you already. And I'm still here. The words sank deep, breaking something loose inside me. For the first time, I wasn't just afraid of being caught. I was afraid of how much I wanted to stop hiding. I turned toward the mirror again, the wig still framing my face, makeup smudged but intact. The girl staring back at me looked fragile, trembling, but real. And as I gazed at her, something shifted. The fear didn't vanish, it never did, but behind it, I felt something else. A spark of defiance. A longing too strong to ignore. Maybe the world wasn't ready to see her yet. But I was starting to realize I couldn't keep her buried forever. The days after that close call felt like walking a tightrope over an endless drop. Every smile at school, every casual conversation, every laugh with friends was laced with tension, like one wrong word or one slip of my expression could unravel everything. But the mirror never lied. Each night I found myself back in her room, the lamp flickering against the glass, the wig and makeup waiting like pieces of another life. And every time I put them on, the boy in me shrank further away, retreating into the corners of my reflection until only she remained. It scared me, but it also set me free. One night, after hours of sitting in silence with her, I whispered, "What if this isn't just a game anymore?" She didn't flinch. She didn't tease. She just looked at me with steady eyes and asked, "Do you want it to be?" The question rang in my head like a bell. I thought about it long after I went home, lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Did I want this? Did I want her? The truth pressed against my ribs so hard it hurt, yes. But wanting her meant destroying the boy I thought I was. And I didn't know if I was brave enough to survive that. The tension followed me into the daylight. In class, I caught myself doodling her name, not mine, not the boy's, but the girl's, the one who stared back at me each night. I didn't even know when I had given her a name, but it was there now, hidden in the margins of my notebook like a secret too dangerous to speak aloud. That afternoon, I walked past a group of my friends joking about how real men acted, their laughter loud, careless, sharp. I forced a smile, but inside it felt like glass shattering. Because I didn't feel like one of them anymore. Maybe I never had. The weight became unbearable. So that night, when she placed the wig in my hands again, I didn't resist. I put it on. I traced my lips with color. I let the eyeliner darken my eyes. And when I turned to the mirror, I didn't whisper denial this time. Instead, I whispered her name. The sound of it out loud made me tremble, my throat thick with tears I couldn't hold back. It was terrifying, fragile, exhilarating, like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing you wanted to jump, not because you wanted to fall, but because you wanted to fly. She stood behind me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "There you are," she said softly. And for the first time, I believed her. But belief didn't erase the fear. Because even as I smiled through the tears, I knew the world outside that room was waiting, sharp and unforgiving. And sooner or later, I'd have to face it. The night I whispered her name, everything changed. It was like unlocking a door I hadn't even realized was there, and once it opened, there was no shutting it again. I carried her with me everywhere after that, not just in mirrors, but in the way I walked, the way I held my breath when someone looked too closely, the way I dreamed of things I couldn't admit out loud. But the double life was exhausting. Each morning I pulled on the boys' clothes felt heavier, each forced laugh with my friends more hollow. I started avoiding them, making excuses, retreating into silence. And of course, they noticed. One afternoon, one of them slung an arm around my shoulder in the hallway and grinned. "You've been acting weird lately. What's up with you? Got some big secret or something?" The blood drained from my face. For a heartbeat, I was sure he knew. I laughed it off, mumbling something about homework, but inside I was shaking. Because he wasn't wrong. I did have a secret. One I was terrified they'd rip out of me. That night, I told her everything. How I couldn't breathe around my friends anymore, how the fear gnawed at me like teeth, how the girl inside me wasn't just a reflection, but someone who wouldn't stay hidden. She listened quietly, her hands folded in her lap, and when I finished, she said, "You don't have to tell the world yet. But you do need to stop lying to yourself." The words stung, but they were true. She suggested something I never imagined I'd agree to, stepping outside, just for a moment, as her. Not far, not public, just the backyard in the dark where no one could see. My whole body trembled at the thought. But curiosity outweighed the terror. That night, with the wig snug on my head and the dress brushing against my legs, I followed her to the sliding glass door. The cool night air spilled in, carrying the scent of grass and damp earth. My heart thundered. "Just one step," she whispered. "Just to feel it." I hesitated, staring at the darkness like it was a stage waiting to swallow me whole. But then I lifted my foot and stepped onto the porch. The air touched me differently. The breeze threaded through the wig, tugging strands across my cheek, and I shivered. For a heartbeat, I felt real, not trapped in a mirror, not confined to four walls, but existing. And then I heard it. A laugh. Not hers. Not mine. From somewhere across the fence, muffled but distinct. A neighbor. A voice that made my heart stop cold. I froze, panic rising like a wave about to drown me. Had they seen? Was I visible in the porch light? I bolted back inside, slamming the door shut, my chest heaving, tears stinging my eyes. I can't do this," I gasped. "They'll find out. They'll all find out." She caught me by the shoulders, steadying me, her voice firm but gentle. "You didn't do anything wrong. You just existed. And the world didn't end." But to me, it felt like it almost had. Because if one stranger's laugh could send me spiraling, what would happen when it was my friends? My family? I looked back at the sliding door, the night pressing against the glass, and I realized something terrifying. I wanted to step out again. And that one scared me more than anything. I couldn't stop thinking about that night on the porch. The shock of the air, the way it threaded through the wig, the thrill and terror of being just outside the boundaries of secrecy. Even though I had panicked, even though I had run, something about those few seconds lingered like a spark that refused to die. Days passed, and I carried it with me. In class, I stared out the window, imagining what it would be like to walk through the world as her without hiding. At night, when I stood in front of the mirror, I traced her face with trembling fingers, whispering her name again, softer each time but truer. The fear didn't go away. It never would. But it began to shift, melting into something else longing. One evening, I sat in her room with the wig resting in my lap, my fingers tangled in its strands. I'm scared, I admitted. Every second, I'm scared. But I don't think I want to go back anymore. She studied me with that steady gaze of hers, the one that always saw past my words. Then maybe fear isn't the enemy. Maybe it's just proof that what you want matters. Her words hit deep. I thought about all the times I had laughed when I wanted to cry, all the times I had played along while shrinking inside, all the times I had hidden from the person in the mirror. What if this wasn't about pretending anymore? What if it was about finally stopping the pretend? That night, I put the wig on again. Not rushed, not panicked. Slowly. Deliberately. Like a ritual. She helped me with the makeup, but I did most of it myself, my hands steadier than before. And when I looked in the mirror, she was there, clearer, stronger, undeniable. I smiled, not with shame this time, but with something close to pride. She stood behind me, her reflection beside mine, and whispered, "You look like you." The words made my throat tighten. For once, I didn't argue. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if I'll ever be brave enough to tell my friends, my family, the world. Maybe I'll stumble, maybe I'll hide again, maybe I'll fall apart before I figure it all out. But for the first time, I feel like I've taken a step onto my own path. And even if the road ahead is terrifying, even if it's full of laughter from strangers and questions I can't yet answer, I know this. She's real. She's me. And I don't want to lose her anymore. The mirror no longer feels like a trap. It feels like a window. And every time I look into it, I see a future I'm still too afraid to name, but one I'm no longer afraid to want.